Good evening. I want to start with a sentence you've probably never heard before. A wall of beer once killed 8 people. It sounds like a joke. 320,000 gallons of porter, a 15-foot wave, a London neighborhood, but it actually happened. On October 17, 1814, the Horseshoe Brewery's biggest vat simply let go. Tonight we're walking through the strangest industrial disaster you were never taught. Grab a drink. I promise ours will stay in the glass. Here's our route. First, we'll meet the brewery and the ridiculously big vat at the heart of it. Then we'll watch the thing burst and follow the wave as it rolls through St Giles. After that, the aftermath, a courtroom, a verdict, and a bill that read 0. And finally, the legend, how a genuine tragedy became a punchline we're still telling 2 centuries later. 4 acts, one very foamy story. Welcome to the Horseshoe Brewery, run by Muke & Company. This place didn't make small beer, it made porter, London's working-class drink, in industrial quantities. And to make that much beer, you need vats on a scale that's genuinely hard to picture. We're talking 22-foot wooden giants, each one a small building full of fermenting liquid. This is where our story lives, and where it's about to come unglued. Picture a wooden barrel the height of a 2-story house, wrapped in iron hoops and full of actively fermenting porter. That's not a metaphor. That's the vat. The pressure inside was enormous. Fermentation was literally pushing outward on every seam, and those iron hoops were the only thing holding it all together. On October 17th, one of them decided it had had enough. When a hoop breaks, this is not a place you want to be standing. At about 4:30 in the afternoon, a storehouse clerk named George Crick noticed one of the iron rings had snapped. He told his boss, and the boss did the most Georgian thing possible, told Crick to write a note and they'd fix it later. Because honestly, a broken hoop happened a few times a year. It was routine. The only problem was that this particular vat was completely full and under maximum pressure. Nobody thought twice. An hour later, everybody would be thinking about it. Let's put the scale in numbers because these are genuinely absurd. Roughly 320,000 gallons of porter. That's over 1 million liters if you prefer the modern measure. A wave 15 feet high rolled out of that brewery. The vat that started it all stood 22 feet tall. And the human cost. 8 people killed. 4 numbers that should tell you this wasn't a quirky little spill. It was a genuine disaster wearing a beer costume. About an hour after Crick filed his note, the vat burst with absolutely no warning. No creak, no crack, no dramatic pause, just a full, violent rupture. The force of the escaping beer was so strong it knocked the stopcock off a neighboring vat, which then also started dumping its contents, followed by a chain reaction of hogsheads and barrels letting go. In minutes, all that beer was heading for the street. This is the moment the flood becomes literal. Here's the whole disaster on a clock. At 4:30, the hoop snaps, the clerk logs it, and everyone yawns. Just after 5:30, the vat ruptures and the domino effect begins. Within minutes, a wave is surging down George Street and New Street, and the force of it even brought down part of the brewery wall. And here's the detail I love. For months afterward, the neighborhood reportedly smelled of beer. Even the aftermath had a hangover. This wasn't a pretty fountain. St Giles was a densely packed slum, the Rookery, full of cheap tenements and narrow lanes with no drainage. When a 15-foot wave of porter hits streets with nowhere to drain, it doesn't run off. It rises. It flooded cellars, pushed through basements, and destabilized whole buildings. People climbed onto tables and furniture to stay above it. A wall of beer coming at you down the alley is no longer funny. It's terrifying. 2 households tell the whole human story, and I'll keep this gentle. In one home, Mary Banfield and her 4-year-old daughter, Hannah, had just sat down to tea when the flood hit. In another, Anne Saville was holding a wake for her 2-year-old son, who died the day before, with 4 mourners. Both homes were destroyed by the beer, and between them they account for most of the 8 lives lost. A tea party and a funeral interrupted by a brewery. Now the kicker. Muke & Company went to court and walked out clean. The judge ruled the whole thing an act of God, which meant no negligence and no liability. For the families in the Rookery, that verdict meant no compensation, nothing at all. Some whispered the brewery had bribed the judge, though nothing was ever proven. But the practical result was brutal. The people with the least lost the most, and the law simply shrugged. That's the scale balancing itself right in front of us. The verdict's fine print is almost darker than the flood. No negligence found, just cosmic bad luck, apparently. No compensation for the victims, who were mostly poor and Irish. And here's the twist that really stings. After negotiating, Mook's and company actually recovered some of the tax duty on all that lost beer. So the brewery lost a vat, got its money back, and paid nothing to the families of the dead. Accident? Absurd? Absurd? Absolutely. Over time, the story started to outgrow the facts. You'll hear tales of crowds scooping up free beer and rioting in the streets, but contemporary reports say the crowd was remarkably well behaved. Those riot stories seem to have arrived later, once people imagined what they thought should have happened. The Morning Post said the area looked like it had been hit by an earthquake, and the smell of stale beer reportedly hung around for months. The truth was strange enough without the embellishment. And that's the London beer flood, an industrial accident so bizarre it reads like satire, but with 8 real people at its center. The takeaways aren't exactly subtle. Unchecked engineering hubris, a justice system that let a brewery off the hook, and a poor community that absorbed the entire cost. It's a warning served in a pint glass. So the next time someone jokes about swimming in beer, raise a toast to the absurdity and to the people who didn't get to laugh.